competition.
Yes, how can I help?
I know the competition's been running for 10 years, but I've never taken part before. I want to be clear on the rules. Is 20 minutes the maximum length of the film?
That's correct. So, shall I run through some of the other rules for entry?
That'd be great. I'll make some notes.
All right, so the deadline for getting the whole film made and sending it in to us is on Wednesday, May the 15th.
Oh, really? I thought the submission date was sometime at the end of June, the 30th.
That's when the judges announce the winners.
Right. I guess I don't have as much time to make this film as I thought.
Now, just so it's clear, one of the rules is about the team of people you have working with you. Will you be doing most of the filming yourself?
Probably, yes.
Okay, but perhaps you'll be needing some technical support with editing and the audio?
I imagine so.
That's fine, but you can't employ any professional actors, I'm afraid. They all need to be new to acting, having a go for the first time.
I see. Not a problem. Now, I know that one of the rules is about the things you need to include in your film.
That's right. Last year, all films had to include a scene with a broken pair of glasses.
What about this year?
Well, it's been decided that one of your main characters has to be a child. Or if you prefer, it could be an animal instead, but we have to see them in a number of scenes, okay?
All right, I'll have a think about that. I'm not sure which one would be easier to work with.
It can certainly be a challenge, but that's what the competition is all about. Now, it's not just our rules you need to think about. You might also need to get permission, say, for example, if you decided you wanted to add some music to the film.
That sounds complicated. I suppose I could use a local band, people I know that would help out. I wouldn't need permission in that case.
Good idea. Then you don't need to worry about the legal side of things.
All right, that's clearer. Actually, is that right that the film doesn't need to be in English?
Yes, because if a film wins the competition in this country, it could end up being part of an international competition. But if you're going to use another language, you've got to provide subtitles, and those do have to be in English and 100% accurate. If they're not, your film won't be accepted in the competition.
Seems fair.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
I don't suppose you could give me any advice about making the film, I mean.
Of course. In my opinion, it's the script that you should concentrate on. That comes first. Work out what everyone's going to say and go from there.
Okay, thanks for that. And I read somewhere that you shouldn't have too many characters or locations.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I also read that with short films, the judges have their preferences. I mean, they seem to like films with a serious message, like a documentary. I guess I shouldn't do a comedy because not everyone laughs at the same thing.
Yes, stay away from that kind of film. A story with a clear beginning, middle, and end. That's what the judges look for.
I was thinking I could look at some of the films from last year's competition, you know, to give me a better idea of what to do.
Yes, you could certainly do that. If you go to our website, have a look at last year's winner. His name was Greg Hislop.
How do you spell that last name?
Sure, it's Hyslop. His film was actually one of the shorter ones, but the judges really liked it.
Actually, I'm wondering if I've seen that one already. Isn't it about an artist, someone who no one appreciates, but then she ends up selling lots of her paintings?
That's right. If you want to have another look, the film is called Imagine. It really holds your attention.
Thanks. I'll have another look after this call.
So, you know what the prizes are? It's $500 for third place, up to $2,000 for the overall winner. And of course, the winning films are shown in a theatre so the public can see them too.
That would be an amazing thing to happen. So that would be the Bridge Theatre, would it, in the city centre?
Yes, that's my favourite theatre, actually. Lovely view of the river. So, do you have any more questions that you want to run by?
That is the end of part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers. Exam practice, test 3. Listening, part 2. You will hear a man talking to a group of volunteers who are involved in conservation work in an area called Eskdale Wood. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for volunteering to help with our conservation work in Eskdale Wood next weekend. A big group like this means we can really achieve a lot. Let's start with the tasks we need to get done. I'm happy to say that since the last clean-up of the wood, the litter hasn't returned, so that's one job we can forget about. But because of the recent storm, there's been damage to some older trees. A few big branches have come down and they're blocking the paths. We need volunteers to pull them off and pile them up somewhere else so they're not in the way. While you're working, have a look at the bird boxes we placed in the wood last summer. We're sure that most of them have been used, so that was a job worth doing. The storm has also blown down the fences on the north side of the wood, so we'll need you to give a hand with repairs. There'll be someone there to supervise, so you'll get that job done quite quickly. What do you need to bring with you? Gloves are essential. You don't want to end up with cuts and dirt all over your hands. If you don't have a good pair already, I'd suggest popping into town and buying a pair from the garden centre. They seem to have a good range. Now, the forecast is for cloud, but at least it'll be a dry weekend. You can leave your sunscreen at home. As usual, we'll be handing out any tools you need at the start of the day. Spades, saws, hammers, it'll all be supplied. There are parts of Eskdale Wood which are still muddy after the storm, so I'd recommend boots. You'll need to supply your own, and I'd put them on in the car park if I were you before you enter the woods. And thanks to some funding from the local residents committee, we've got a bit of money for snacks, so I'll be bringing some sandwiches with me for everyone.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
Right. Some of you have expressed an interest in taking part in this year's bird count. The bird count is really useful. It tells us which native birds are doing well or if their numbers are declining. And we can also find out if there are any new species of birds that don't normally inhabit the woods. So, if you decide to take part in the bird count, there are a few things you need to do. Nowadays, people don't tend to record what they see on paper. It's all done through a mobile app. To get one of those, you'll need to go online and find a website like eBird or Nestwatch. If you've never signed up with them before, register your details and they'll send a mobile app to your phone. Once you've got that sorted, you need to consider exactly where you're going to count the birds. You might decide to spend the day, say, just in a single field, or you might want to cover a wider area. It's up to you. Stay away from privately owned land because you'd need to get authorization for that. The next thing to do is get some other people to come along and help you, a group that are also interested in birds and that are capable of using the technology. Yes, because by yourself, it's easy to miss the birds that might be in the trees behind you. Then on the day of the bird count, you need to give all your helpers a printout showing pictures of the birds you're hoping to see. The pictures should be clear enough so people can really distinguish between similar-looking species. So yes, the document should be in color, really. Also, remind people that the bird count is not a race to find the most birds possible. It's supposed to be a group effort, with everyone staying in the same place. What else? Okay, at the end of the day, once all the counting's been finished, get together with the rest of the group. How many birds of one species has everyone seen? Compare notes. It doesn't really matter if your totals are slightly different. Just get everyone to work out and decide, more or less, what the probable number was. Finally, when you're ready to submit all the data you've collected, have a look at the pictures you've taken. Choose the best one. You want a sharp image of a single bird rather than an image of a whole lot of birds in the distance. Upload it with your data, and you never know, you might get a prize if yours is the best shot. All right, let's move on to the data.
That is the end of part 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Exam practice, test 3, listening, part 3. You will hear 2 art history students, Chloe and Oliver, talking about the research they have done on the restoration and reproduction of old paintings. First, you have time to look at questions 21 to 25.
Kita itu ya, lihat kunci jawaban untuk nomor 1 sampai 20 dulu ya. Oke, Miss.
Oke. Ini, the answer key-nya nomor 1. Kelihatan kan ya tulisannya meskipun kecil?
Kelihatan, Miss. 15 min. Nomor 11, Miss.
11.
Dua puluh, Miss.
Okay, how many correct numbers do you guys get? Nisa, Mr. Wira?
Fourteen, Miss.
14. So 6
Yeah.
incorrect numbers. Pretty good.
Iya.
Pretty good, Nisa. Wira? Mr. Wira?
12, Miss.
Huh?
12.
How many? 12?
Iya, Miss. Tadi kayak kelewat gitu kan yang
Oh.
soal pertamanya. Jadi kayak waduh gitu. Panik.
Nah, itu. Don't get panic. Jangan panik kalau misalnya kelewat satu nomor. Dan kalau kelewat satu nomor ya udah, jangan kayak berusaha mencari jawaban di satu nomor itu. Ya udah, kosongin saja kalau perlu memang.
Ya,
Langsung
tadi mau nanya itu
pindah,
juga.
langsung ikuti soal-soal berikutnya. Karena kalau terlalu fokus dengan soal yang tadi, apa ya jawabannya ya yang tadi ya, kayak dwelling too much on that question, nanti yang lain kan kelewatan. Hati-hati dengan itu.
Cuman nyari juga tadi, Miss. Ini percakapannya udah sampai ke soal mana gitu.
Oke, kita lanjut sekarang. Ini multiple choice sekarang. Always, I think you will always get this kind of question type. Multiple choice, which means that karena ini part ketiga juga lebih challenging. Conversation jadi part ketiga berbeda dengan part kedua. Kalau part kedua kan monolog tadi. Kalau part ketiga kita balik conversation lagi. Conversationnya biasanya nggak hanya 2 orang, bisa kadang 3 orang. Again, ini multiple choice. Biasanya karena multiple choice, biasanya semua options-nya akan dibahas, semua options-nya akan disebutkan. But we have to choose the correct one sesuai dengan pertanyaannya, ya kan? Okay, you guys may read the question first, and then I'm gonna play the audio.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Okay, Chloe, let's put the presentation together. What do you want to include in the introduction?
Well, we're looking at the restoration of old paintings and the reproduction, so we should begin with a definition to show how those two things are different.
Is that necessary? Let's start in a visual way, show some paintings that have been restored, and talk about why it was necessary. So, for instance, a painting that was damaged by water and another one by insects or by sunlight.
Okay, let's go with that. It'll get everyone's attention.
After the introduction, we should tell everyone about our museum visit.
Yes, it was great to see people restoring paintings in front of us. Did you know that most of the restorers we met didn't have a degree in art history? They'd done things like chemistry and archaeology. I never would have imagined that.
Me neither. I had no idea those kind of skills would be useful.
Apparently, a painting can take a year to clean.
I guess it would. And one guy I spoke to told me they're always experimenting, reading up on different ways to clean the paintings.
So, would you be interested in a career in art restoration? You know you don't actually need to be able to draw, so it might suit you.
Very funny. Look, I think it would be a great job, but I wouldn't choose to do it. You get to work in interesting places, that's true. I mean, sometimes you'd be working in a public place, like restoring the paintings high up on a church ceiling.
With the public watching?
I wouldn't mind that. But the thing is, when someone owns the painting you're working on, you've got to get it right. What if they didn't like the colors you'd used? Too much pressure.
True. Since we visited the museum, I've been researching other restored paintings. One was a Dutch landscape. It had been hanging in a museum for over 100 years, and everyone just thought it was a nice scene of people on the beach. And then a restorer started cleaning it and discovered someone had painted over a whale.
A whale?
Yes, the original artist had painted a whale on the beach, and later, I suppose the painting was bought by someone who thought the whale ruined a pretty scene, and they paid another artist to cover it up.
You must be right. Not everyone judges a painting in the same way, obviously. Anyway, we'll have plenty to say about restoration. What about digital reproduction?
Yeah, digital technology is having quite an impact on the art world. We can now reproduce famous paintings, and you can see something that looks just like the original.
I guess the difference between a digital reproduction and a fake painting is no one's pretending it was painted by the original artist. And what I like about digital reproduction is you could potentially make lots of copies so a wider audience can see them.
Maybe I'd rather look at the real painting.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Okay, so if we're talking about digital reproduction of art, we have to mention the company Factum Arte and how they reproduced famous paintings that had been lost or damaged so they can go on public display.
Good idea.
Let's note down the challenges the team faced. What about Vincent van Gogh's 6 Sunflowers? The original painting was destroyed. The team had a photo of it, but it wasn't very clear.
Right. They couldn't see how Van Gogh had used his brush. They knew the National Gallery had a nearly identical sunflower painting by Van Gogh, and so they had to ask the gallery whether the team would be allowed to study and scan it so they could reproduce the brushstrokes in the right way.
They got approval in the end.
What about the concert? The original was stolen, right?
The team had a photo they could use, but the problem was it was a photo of the concert after someone had tried to touch it up with fresh paint.
And they'd done a terrible job, hadn't they?
Yes, but the team were happy with the reproduction in the end. We should mention the portrait of Sir Winston Churchill.
Churchill hated that portrait, so his wife burnt it and nothing was left.
So, the Factum Arte team had to search for the pencil sketches the artist had also made of Churchill as part of his preparation.
Right. For me, I was most interested in The Water Lilies.
By Claude Monet. In that case, the painting wasn't lost, but the top layer of paint had turned completely black because of smoke from a fire. The team had to work out what the colors beneath that layer had been.
And then there was Marto, a painting by Tamara de Lempicka. No one knows for sure what happened to the original. At least the team had a black and white photo they could work from.
But they needed to know what colors Lempicka would have used. And most of her other paintings are held in private collections. Because of that, they couldn't go and see them. That's a shame, because her work would have been...
That is the end of part 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Exam practice, test 3. Listening, part 4. You will hear a student giving a presentation about the challenges of living in space. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Hello, everyone. So I'd like to tell you about some of the challenges of living in space. We'll start with the International Space Station, or ISS, as it's often called. The ISS has been in space, in orbit around the Earth, since 1998. Over 200 astronauts have lived on board, and one of the biggest challenges for them is living in microgravity. So, what happens when you're living in microgravity 24 hours a day for months? For a start, it affects your blood circulation. On Earth, your blood would naturally be pulled towards your feet, but in space, it goes to your head. And we'll talk a bit more about the consequences of that later. But it also goes to your chest, and that's why astronauts have to be careful about their blood pressure. Microgravity also affects the minerals stored inside your body. Over time, for example, the amount of calcium inside your bones begins to decrease, so the bones become weaker. Yes, it's not much fun living in space. The astronauts have to maintain a very strict exercise program. They do 2.5 hours of exercise 6 days a week. If they don't, what happens is that their muscle begins to waste. Some of it also turns into fat. And one final problem that some astronauts experience, they find that when they get back to Earth, they can't see clearly. Scientists aren't exactly sure why this happens, but it seems that the astronauts' vision can be permanently affected. Another challenge with living in the ISS is you have to take everything you need with you. So space agencies like NASA are constantly improving the way they recycle things. Water, of course, is a vital resource, and every little bit counts. That means that even the sweat that the astronauts produce is recycled. I know that doesn't sound very nice, but NASA says their water is purer than anything you'd drink on Earth. So, what's next? Humans are already living in space, in the space station, but now the goal is to live on the Moon or Mars. For this, we need to make buildings, and the challenges for engineers and architects are even harder. It's incredibly expensive to transport materials into space, so they need to be as light as possible. The alternative is to use materials which already exist on the Moon or Mars, and this does seem to be the sensible way forward. So to make buildings on the Moon, for example, we could use rock, and the Moon also has plenty of useful minerals. These can be made into metal, into brick, and some engineers are also suggesting they could produce paint. So it seems everything we need for a basic building might already be on the Moon. Actually, there's one thing that NASA hasn't managed yet, and that's to increase the size of the windows on the ISS. They're very small, and if people were going to live in buildings on the Moon, this is something NASA still has to work on. So, even if we managed to create a network of buildings for people to live in on the Moon or Mars and grow food and be self-sufficient, they would still need mental stimulation and opportunities to relax and stay in touch with what was happening back on Earth. Virtual reality could be the answer. Imagine you're living on the Moon, but you could use virtual reality to walk around a museum and see all the exhibits. That would be incredible. And by using virtual reality, you could continue your education by, say, studying for a qualification that might be useful in your current environment or once you're back on Earth. Now, Mars is a different thing.
That is the end of part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers.
Oke, kita cek kunci jawabannya sekarang. Oke, nomor.
That is the end of the
Nih, nomor 21 sampai 24 dulu. Coba. A, B, A, A. Nomor 25, C. 25C, terus 26 sampai 30 ini.
Miss lihat nomor 40-nya, Miss.
40 qualification.
Miss.
25 tadi C, sir. 25C.
Oke.
So, how many correct numbers, guys? Berapa benarnya?
Yang ini banyak salah di part 3-nya, Miss.
Karena multiple choice mungkin ya.
Iya, betul.
Yang tadi kayak matching itu juga agak challenging memang.
Iya, agak challenging itu, Miss.
Kalau Mr. Wira?
Aku yang di banyak di 26 ke 30. Tadi
Itu
ada
yang
yang
challenging
nelpon.
ya, benar. Yang matching itu challenging. Bahkan sebenarnya
Jadi
anehnya ya, part keempat itu kan sebenarnya harusnya lebih susah ya. Tapi part keempat itu
enggak,
malah
lebih enak.
menurutku lebih gampang malah.
Iya, Miss.
Selalu part
Lebih
keempat
enak
malah
sih.
selalu lebih mudah daripada part ketiga.
Iya, aku
Karena di
banyak
part
salah
ketiga
juga.
itu challenging-nya adalah tricky question-nya itu ya itu disebutkan semua pilihannya kalau multiple choice.
Benar 12, Miss. Cuman.
Kalau matching seperti ini juga challenging karena apa? Karena yang disebutkan sama speakers-nya itu berbeda dengan apa yang dituliskan biasanya.
Ya, bahasanya beda.
Kayak paraphrasing-nya.
Paraphrase.
Benar.
Paraphrase.
Makanya, dan ini challenging sekali karena panjang sekali.
Iya, oke. Banyak lagi pilihannya kan.
Sambil dengarkan, sambil harus baca itu, sepanjang itu.
Ada tips nggak, Miss, untuk yang itu, Miss?
Ada apa?
Ada tips nggak untuk yang
misalnya kayak ini ya, they had. Mungkin bagian awal itu kan sebenarnya nggak perlu dibaca kan. Kalau teman-teman pakai paper, sinyalku bagus nggak di sana?
Bagus.
Oke. Kalau teman-teman pakai paper based test, kan nanti bisa di highlight keywordnya. Ya kan? Jadi misalnya sebenarnya frasa yang di awal ini, istilah yang di awal ini kan nggak perlu kita baca lagi. Intinya kita cuma perlu melihat ini yang bagian akhir di sini loh, yang kayak misalnya nih, they only had a photo of fairly restored version of the painting. Jadi foto restored version. Ya udah itu mungkin yang di garis bawahi. Karena apa? Karena painting di sini. Kenapa perlu digaris bawahi? Enggak kan? Karena semuanya memang lagi bahas itu. bahasan di apa? Di conversation ini mengenai painting, mengenai drawing, painting. Berarti kita nggak perlu garis bawah itu, karena kita cukup garis bawah yang menurut kita kayak signifikan informasinya. Misalnya di sini kita garis bawahi, saya annotate dulu. Kita garis bawahi foto sama badly restored. Udah itu saja. Then sebenarnya awal kalimatnya ini kan sama. Then they had. You don't necessarily need to see this part, ya kan? Saya nomor B, option B misalnya. To see under the damaged surface of the painting. Damaged surface. Apa? Mungkin kita bisa highlight the damaged surface-nya, ya kan? Untuk C misalnya. Apa ini? Permission to analyze Seymour painting ya. Permission to analyze aja. Cukup permission to analyze ini yang kita garis bawahi. Ya. So if you let's say you get this kind of long sentences yang menjadi optionmu, just try to pick up some keywords-nya yang kemudian nanti akan membantumu untuk cepat locate. Okay, I think that's the information-nya. Itu.
Oke. Tadi mau buat highlight tapi mikir kan ntar kotor pula laptop saya kan.
Oh ya, kalau teman-teman ngambil komputer, you cannot highlight.
Ya, tapi kan ini nggak bisa, Miss.
Iya, kalau nanti tes pakai komputer susah buat highlight.
Iya, Miss.
Makanya challenging sekali kalau tes nanti pakai komputer. Tapi enaknya kalau komputer itu nanti enaknya di writing.
Bener, Miss.
Enak sekali di writing.
Ratingnya nggak perlu capek ngapus gitu.
Waktu loh. Kalau misalnya nanti entah Mr. Wira atau Nisa ngambil tes yang paper, kalau writing, kalau hapus saja menghapus kata, itu waktu loh. Kalau kamu accumulate waktumu menghapus itu, lumayan loh.
Dan typo kayak gitu juga ngurangin nilai ya, Miss?
Kalau
ada typo gitu?
Iya.
Berapa di tips gitu?
Iya, sebenarnya apa ya? Sebenarnya examiner juga manusia kan, mereka nggak robot. Mereka nggak suka melihat tulisan yang dicoret terus ditambah-tambahkan di bawahnya. Orang manusia kan bias gitu loh. Kalau melihat itu kan mungkin nanti who knows mempengaruhi total skormu. Makanya ambil komputer saja.
Jadi Miss better pilih yang ini ya, komputer base ya.
Aku dulu tes ya computer based test, which is a lot easier.
Cuman di reading sama listening.
Apa Mr. Wira?
Di listening sama readingnya itu saya kan ya kalau ngerjain itu biasanya memang nyoret-nyoret gitu.
Ambil saja 2. Terus cek mana yang nilainya paling tinggi. Ambil 2 tes, terus pilih mana yang nilainya lebih tinggi.
Terus nggak bisa di-compare gitu ya kan, Miss? Soalnya di computer based writing sama speakingnya tinggi. Nah, itu kita pindah. Digabung dari yang 2 itu, gabungin yang tinggi-tingginya.
Iya,
mungkin
benar.
saya menunggu Miss Lika untuk mencobanya, Miss.
Apa Wira? Mr. Wira?
Mungkin saya menunggu untuk Miss Lisa mencobanya.
Audio komputerku kurang bagus ini, beda laptop ini, kurang bagus audionya. I'm sorry, I cannot really hear your guys' voice very clearly here. But I can catch some point though. Any questions before we end the meeting? Kayaknya masih sisa 7 menit. I don't think we can continue. Any questions? Jadi saya pengen share apa?
Di mini IELTS itu listening sama reading aja.
Iya, mini IELTS. Sering-sering buka mini IELTS, benar. Di mini IELTS itu hanya reading sama listening. Bagus kok di sana. Jadi kalau ingin memfamiliarkan yourself dengan menggunakan komputer, tes komputer, reading, listening, ya itu mini IELTS. Bagus sekali.
Kunci jawabannya juga ada kayak yang Miss tampilkan tadi?
Iya, jadi setelah lebih interaktif malah. Jadi kamu klik-klik jawabanmu, nanti muncul total skormu juga. Sekaligus jawaban yang benar.
Oke, I will try.
Lebih enak latihan di mini IELTS. Apa ya? Untuk listening sendiri, ya itu sih biasakan mendengarkan dalam bahasa Inggris, membiasakan mendengarkan materials in English. Entah itu podcast, whatever audios in English, untuk membiasakan itu bagaimana native English speakers ngomong, terutama jadi biasakan dengarkan yang itu aksen British, aksen Australian, karena biasanya di IELTS selalu menggunakan 2 aksen tersebut.
New Zealand juga, Miss.
Oh ya, New Zealand juga. Kalau
memang jarang.
Pengen dengarkan yang versi British accent, bisa di channel BBC, ya kan? Kalau Australian accent, biasanya di channel
ABC.
Apalagi ya? Sebenarnya perbanyak latihan, intinya itu perbanyak latihan. Untuk listening, perbanyak latihan. Sebenarnya listening itu kita butuh agar selalu bisa itu fokus dengan apa yang diperdengarkan sama audionya. Kalau kita sudah lengah saja saat gitu, pasti hilang. Hilang konsentrasi, hilang soalnya, ya kan? Bahkan yang listeningnya bagus pun, kalau misalnya dia lengah mungkin, atau mungkin nggak catch soalnya, pasti salah, ya kan? Itu sih latihan fokus kalau dalam listening. I think you guys listening skill-nya udah oke. Mungkin kayak fokus to understand the question, to follow the audio, the speakers-nya. Mungkin itu yang perlu dilatih, dilatih lebih sering. Jadi teman-teman bisa kok latihan sendiri, pakai buku Cambridge, mungkin Nisa juga sering pakai buku Cambridge, ya kan? Series Cambridge 1 sampai berapa Nisa? 15?
14 yang terbaru ya, Miss ya.
14
yang terakhir. 15, tapi saya terakhir lihat yang 14 sih, Miss. 15 belum.
Lihatnya di mana, Miss? Di internet.
Di internet, cari-cari di internet. Silahkan download sendiri ya. Di Google,
tapi kadang yang di mini IELTS itu,
ya mini IELTS juga semua dari Cambridge.
Dari Cambridge sih ya, kemarin tuh ngecek sama. Dia potong-potong gitu listening.
Benar. Di mini IELTS, kebanyakan memang dari, saya bisa bilang 90% soalnya itu dari Cambridge. Sisanya mungkin dari buat sendiri, yang kayak dari artikel, entah itu dari TED Talk, mereka buat soal. Tapi overall kebanyakan memang dari Cambridge Book Series.
Miss, untuk soal nomor 21 sampai 25 ada tips nggak, Miss?
21, 25, apa ya tipsnya kira-kira? Intinya baca. Jadi kalau dikasih waktu, misalnya 30 seconds sebelum audionya di play, kan kita dikasih waktu buat baca soalnya. Pastikan semua soal itu kebaca. Kalau belum bisa kebaca semua, itu biasanya bingung nanti pas mendengarkan, terus mencoba memahami soalnya kadang bingung. Pasti miss pas mendengarkan, kelewat pas dengarkannya. Karena intinya otak kita nggak bisa kayak multitasking gitu loh. Nah, makanya ketika dikasih waktu, pastikan baca dengan cepat sekali soalnya dan optionnya. Kalau sudah, baru dengarkan, ya kan? Nah, hati-hati juga dengan itu options yang disebutkan yang bukan merupakan jawabannya. Karena intinya semua options, misalnya nomor 21 ya, A, B, C itu pasti disebutkan semua. Cuma kita harus memang fokus memahami soalnya agar bisa memilih pilihan yang tepat, ya kan? itu sih, there are not really many tips in doing listening, but again, just practice a lot. That's the point. Practice. The more you practice, the more you get better. Oke.
Kalau Miss pribadi, iya.
Apa, Mr. Wira?
Kalau Miss pribadi kalau kayak listening ini kayak Miss dengari kan bahasa Inggris, terus Miss langsung ngartikan,
Iya.
hafal dan lihat soalnya gitu.
Ha.
Gitu Miss ya. Kalau Miss pribadi.
Apa sih? Kurang paham aku.
Kalau misalnya listening kayak gini, kan kita kan dengar native speaker-nya itu ngomong kan in English. Halo?
Ya.
Halo, Miss.
I think your connection. I couldn't hear you. Yang tadi kayak terputus.
It's okay lah, Miss.
No worries. Just text me ya if you have any questions.
Okay.
Just text me, guys. Your voice, no, my computer audio, I think that is a problem. Yeah, I think that's all. Ya sudah jam 8. I'll see you again on Sunday. Next week listening lagi. Ini sudah pertemuan ketiga, berarti kita masih sisa 2 meetings ya.
Miss record-nya dikirim kan?
Ya, oke. Saya kirim nanti.
Thank you, Miss.
Oke, itu ya, sering-sering latihan sendiri ya. Entah itu di mini Ielts, entah itu dari Cambridge series, sering-sering latihan, karena itu penting. Oke, thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Miss. Bye.